The transport ship Meridian's Hope descended through Earth's atmosphere with the grace of a falling star, carrying refugees from the Zephyrian War that had ravaged the Andromeda sector. Among the hundreds of displaced beings stood Annie, a young Zephyrian girl whose violet skin and luminescent silver eyes marked her as different, even among her own kind. The other refugees kept their distance, whispering the word that had followed her since birth: cursed on Zephyria. Annie had been born during the eclipse of shadows, a celestial event that occurred once every 1,000 years. Superstition claimed that children born under that eclipse carried misfortune in their wake. When her village was destroyed by enemy forces, the survivors blamed her. When their escape vessel malfunctioned, they blamed her. Now, as they prepared to start new lives on Earth, they still blamed her. Annie stood alone at the observation window, watching the blue planet grow larger, her small hands pressed against the cold glass. She was only 12 cycles old, roughly equivalent to a human 10-year-old, but her eyes held the weariness of someone who had lived much longer. Behind her, families huddled together, finding comfort in each other's presence, while she remained untouched, unwanted, invisible except when something went wrong. The landing facility in New Geneva bustled with activity as human officials processed the refugees. That's where Massey first saw her. He was a veteran integration specialist who had worked with dozens of alien species since Earth had joined the Galactic Federation 15 years ago. At 32, he had seen trauma in many forms, but something about the small violet girl standing completely alone in the middle of the crowded hall made him pause. "Who's her guardian?" Massey asked the Zephyrian liaison officer. The tall, blue-skinned official barely glanced in Annie's direction. "She has none. Her parents died in the bombardment. No one will take her." "Why not?" The liaison's face twisted with discomfort. "Superstition. They believe she brings misfortune. It's foolish, but deeply ingrained in our culture." Massey watched as a human child accidentally bumped into Annie. The girl immediately stepped back, bowing her head in apology, her whole posture screaming submission and fear. The human child just smiled and continued playing, oblivious to the alien girl's distress. "What happens to her?" Massey asked. "She'll go to the youth facility until she comes of age, I suppose. It's not ideal, but what else can be done?" Massey found himself walking toward Annie before he'd consciously made the decision. She noticed his approach and tensed, her silver eyes widening with apprehension. He crouched down to her level, careful to keep his movements slow and non-threatening. "Hello," he said softly. "My name is Massey. What's yours?" The girl stared at him for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether this was a trick. "Annie," she finally whispered, her voice barely audible above the facility's noise. "That's a beautiful name. Annie, I work here helping people like you find new homes and adjust to Earth. Would you like to talk with me for a bit?" She nodded slowly, and Massey led her to a quieter area. Over the next hour, he learned about her world, not just Zephyria, but her internal world of fear and loneliness. She spoke haltingly at first, but gradually the words came easier. She told him about her mother's laugh, her father's stories, the friends she'd had before they learned to fear her. She told him about the eclipse and how even as a small child, she'd understood that she was somehow wrong, somehow broken. "Do you believe you're cursed?" Massey asked gently. Annie's silver eyes met his. "Does it matter what I believe? Everyone else does." The wisdom in that statement, coming from someone so young, broke something in Massey's heart and rebuilt it simultaneously. He'd spent years helping aliens integrate, maintaining professional boundaries, following protocols. But protocols hadn't accounted for a child who had internalized the cruelty of baseless superstition, who had learned to apologize for her own existence. That evening, Massey filed paperwork that he'd never filed before. The Guardian application forms felt heavy in his hands, weighted with responsibility and possibility. He knew it wouldn't be easy. He was single, worked long hours, and had never raised a child, human or alien. But he also knew that some decisions transcend logic, rooted instead in a fundamental recognition of need-meeting capability. The approval process took 3 weeks. During that time, Massey visited Annie daily at the temporary youth facility. He brought her books about Earth, taught her simple phrases in English, and most importantly, treated her like any other child, not cursed, not damaged, just a girl who liked learning about Earth's oceans and was fascinated by the concept of snow. On the day the approval came through, Massey arrived at the facility with a small backpack he'd prepared. Annie sat in her usual spot by the window, and when she saw him, she offered a tentative smile that had become more frequent over the past weeks. "Annie, I have something important to ask you," Massey said, sitting beside her. "I've been approved to be your guardian, if you want that. It means you'd come live with me, and I'd take care of you. But it's your choice." For the first time since he'd met her, Annie's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of something else entirely. "Why would you choose me? Aren't you afraid of the curse?" Massey took her small, violet hand in his. "Annie, I don't believe in curses, but I do believe in you. I believe you're brave, intelligent, and deserve someone who sees you for who you really are. I'd be honored to be your guardian." Annie launched herself into his arms, and Massey held her as she cried, releasing years of rejection, fear, and loneliness. Around them, facility workers smiled, and even some of the other Zephyrian refugees watched with expressions that mixed surprise, with something that might have been shame. As they left the facility together, Annie's hand secure in his, Massey realized that sometimes the universe doesn't curse people, people curse each other with their fear and ignorance. And sometimes, all it takes to break a curse is one person willing to see past the labels to the truth underneath. Behind them, the Earth sunset in brilliant oranges and reds, colors that Annie had never seen on Zephyria. She looked up at Massey, and he looked down at her, and in that moment, they both understood that family wasn't about biology or species or superstition. It was about choice, compassion, and the courage to stand together against a universe that often felt too vast and too cruel. Annie was no longer alone, and Massey had found a purpose deeper than any job description. Together, they walked toward home,